Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Rick Abruzzi. Thanks for joining us. We're still letting a few folks in from the waiting room, but we'll get started here in the next few seconds. Going to do this how we were doing it yesterday, right? You guys will be muted until the Q&A period after the state board gives their update. And then at that point, you'll have the opportunity to take yourselves off mute. If you do have a question, just raise your hand in the using the functionality on the participants list, and then we'll call on you just to keep it orderly. We are recording it like yesterday. We will send out the link afterwards. You, as members of the media, also have permission to record it, so feel free to do that. We have a number of folks on from the State Board of Elections, including Linda Lamone and Nikki Charlson. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Nikki for the update. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to join you again this morning. Just wanted to share with you, we did issue a press statement in the wee hours of this morning. I wanted to just review that with you and then answer any questions that you might have. So we did announce that election night results from several jurisdictions would not be completed last night. And the process is such that when we are processing results, we are taking data, the local boards of elections are taking data from the thumb drives that are removed from the scanners and loading them into the voting system database. And during that process, the user is prompted to manually confirm any precinct that doesn't have any results before they can proceed. So I'll give an example of how that might work. So if I live in precinct 1-1, and let's say that precinct is in Glen Burnie, I can go to any voting center, I can go to any election day vote center in Anne Arundel County. And let's say I choose to go to one in South County. Let's say I don't. So I don't go to South County. I vote in the one in my neighborhood or somewhere in Glen Burnie, North County. When the stick from the South County, when the thumb drive from the South County election day vote center is being loaded, and it doesn't see any ballots from precinct 1-1, it prompts the user to confirm that. So it will say, we don't see any ballots from precinct 1-1, is that okay? And the user, the local board of elections user, clicks okay. And so what's happened is that because we have more vote centers on election day, and it was one day of voting, that the odds were that you wouldn't have a voter from every single precinct at every single vote center. And so that manual confirmation was occurring regularly last night while the counties were transferring the results. And it led to that data transfer process to take about 8 to 10 minutes thumb drive. And so obviously the counties that have the most thumb drives were the counties that were most affected by this manual confirmation. So that is why we only have partial election day results for our 5 largest jurisdictions. So Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. They had the most thumb drives, and so therefore they encountered this confirmation most frequently and were unable to finish transferring all that data last night. But as I said, we have election day results for the 19 other counties, and we have partial results for 4 of those 5. There's a separate issue with Baltimore County and the transfer, but we do have partial election results for Baltimore City, partial election day results for Baltimore City, Anne Arundel, Prince George's, and Montgomery. So we are working with our vendor to see if there's a way to speed up that transfer process. We think we have found a way for counties with 1-page ballots, which is 20 of our 24 counties. And so that will make, for those counties, the process move more quickly. We're still working to see if there's a solution for the local boards of elections that have 2-page ballots, which are Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's, and Montgomery. And so that's where we are right now. The counties will continue transferring those results today. and we can provide you updates as to how they're going. We will plan to post at about 4:30 each day partial results. So we'll continue to do that until all of the election day results are posted. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I'm gonna let Jane Miller take the first question. Sorry, Rob, you gotta put it in the chat, but I have you now. Okay.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So Nikki, just to talk about this, I mean, we all use flash drives and thumb drives and that kind of thing, but it just, these are where most of the votes are in these largest jurisdictions. And obviously this isn't really have no close races, but it seems, I think a reasonable person like myself, which is not exactly a tech expert, but it seems like an awfully kind of low tech means of operating. Am I right? Can you just explain a little bit more here about what happened in a means that people could really understand?
Sure. So when a ballot is scanned, the results are stored on a thumb drive that is inside of each scanning unit. That is where they're stored. And at the end of each voting day or the end of election day, a bipartisan pair of election judges closes down that scanner and removes the thumb drive. And that pair of bipartisan election officials drives that thumb drive back to the local election office facility where it's loaded into a central secure database. So you're right, Jane, it is low tech because that is the most secure way to transfer those election results. So they're transferring the thumb drive and they're also transferring the paper ballots at the same time. So we don't use a network to transfer results like that. It is driven by a bipartisan pair of election judges from the voting locations to the central facility at the local board where it's loaded in. That is how voting systems typically operate to keep it as secure and as closed of a network as possible.
So just to follow up, so there's no like uploading on site to a central database or something like that?
That's correct. There's no central uploading. This is how the elections community transfers results safely. And so that's where this happened is in the thumb drive upload at the local office is where the transfer speed was about 8 to 10 minutes a thumb drive.
And that's just the delay in that is what caused the disruption in the results?
So taking 8 to 10 minutes a thumb drive, there wasn't enough time to get it all up last night. And so that's why they're not complete. And they will be continuing to do that today and for a few more days until they are complete.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nikki, what is the separate issue in Baltimore County that's slowing things down?
I can get back to you on that. They were transferring results, but there weren't results there. I don't know the specifics, but I'll get back to you on that. Whoever, if you could write down who asked that, Rick, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem. And then you mentioned 4:30 each day. Do you anticipate those 5 counties results taking longer than today? Also, will that affect their ability to resume scanning, counting mailed ballots tomorrow?
So we think that Anne Arundel should finish up today because again, the solution applies to Anne Arundel. They have a single page ballot. We will be checking in with the other 4 local boards and see where they are each day, and we can provide that information to you. It will not affect the counting of mail-in ballots. This is, they're captured in a different way, so it won't impact the ability of the local boards to continue counting their mail-in ballots. Rick, you're muted.
That's my fault. Sarah Kim from WYPR.
Hi, yeah. Just to shift gears here, do you have updated numbers on the number of people who voted yesterday in person? I just want to confirm that.
So maybe I don't have that up on my screen right now. So can we just hold that to the end and I'll pull it up when we're done with this topic?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see any additional hands raised or questions in the, oh, hold on, here are two questions. Aaron, you just don't want to do this. You mentioned counties didn't have time to complete thumb drive transfer last night. What time did they stop counting? Question one. Question two, can you contrast the thumb drive issue with what normally happens during election day? Why is it an issue this time, but not during other elections?
So I think the local boards stopped loading. They stopped transferring the thumb drives probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure exactly what time each of them stopped, but it was pretty late in the evening when it was clear that they were not going to be finishing up their thumb drives last night. And you're right, Aaron, this is something different than we've experienced in prior elections, because this is our first election using vote centers on election day. And that is because of the vote center model. That is why the prompt to ask you, wait a minute, we don't see any ballots from, in my example, precinct 1-1 triggers that confirmation. On election night, when we are a precinct-based system, this issue doesn't occur because it's just not, the system isn't set up for that prompt.
Just to make sure I'm following you, sorry it took me a while to figure out how to turn on my video this morning. It's been a long night, as I'm sure you understand. Are you saying that kind of the software was designed for a traditional election where people would be uploading votes from small precincts that would, it would make sense to need to do that auditing function to kind of override, to make sure all votes are counted, but since it's being applied to voting centers, it becomes a cumbersome, am I following? It becomes a cumbersome process. Sorry, the nanny's singing to the kids in the background. I apologize.
Sorry. When we're precinct based, it's just looking for results from that precinct. When you move to a vote center model, it needs to be able to accommodate ballots from any precinct in that county. So it's just a different way of setting up the election in the software. And so that prompt doesn't happen in a precinct based voting day where it did in a vote center voting day. I don't know if that helped.
Following up on question about thumb drives and scanners, does each scanner at each vote center have a thumb drive, or is it one thumb drive per vote center?
It's one thumb drive per scanner.
Apart from the one voting center opening late in Prince George's County, were there any other problems on Tuesday with voting centers other than long lines?
No, voting yesterday was very smooth, right? So we had some lines in the morning, we had some lines at the end of the day, but most vote centers closed at 8 o'clock or very close to 8 o'clock. So it was generally a very smooth day yesterday.
Was this software purchased this year for the vote centers, or was it old software that was adapted?
So this is the voting system software. So we've been using this voting system software since the 2016 election cycle. It is software that has gone through testing by a federally accredited lab, excuse me, a federally accredited lab, and certified by the United States Election Assistance Commission. So these voting system software packages are customizable for different types of elections. So we've been using the same software, we've just been using it in a different structure. We used it as a vote center model for early voting and then a precinct-based system for election day. But for this election, we used the vote center model on election day too. So it's all the same software package, it's just different settings that you use to set up the election as you need to conduct it.
Were there no concerns prior to election day that this would be an issue? Why weren't preparations made beforehand?
So our experience with transferring results from early voting was it was taking us about taking the local boards of elections just a couple of minutes to transfer the data. And because, excuse me. So the frequency of that manual confirmation just isn't as likely in an early voting model because you have so many more days and you have less voters. So the odds of you having ballots from every precinct in your county are higher. And so that manual confirmation that the user needs to do is an infrequent occurrence. When we moved to election day, we didn't have any reason to think that there would be more than the couple minutes that we had been experienced with early voting for the last, since 2016. So it was that manual confirmation check looking for ballots from every precinct in the county that was slowing the process down. And we had just never experienced that before because we hadn't done that type of election and we hadn't seen it in early voting before.
Jane Miller, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, Nikki, do you have any updated information on number of people who voted? Has that changed? I haven't even looked at the results this morning, but I think as of last night at 10 o'clock, it was about 475.
Right, so if we could just wait until the end. I don't have that pulled up on my screen right now, but I
Okay, that's right. That's fine. That's fine.
Thank
I'll
you.
defer.
Okay, thanks.
I know it's 2 years away, but do you sense that the state keeps this voting center model in 2022? Also, the process of sending out applications for mail-in ballots, does that continue in 2 years?
So the vote center model is as a function of the governor's proclamation. I certainly hope that we're not under the emergency proclamation still in 2 years. So that would be then a decision for the General Assembly to make as to whether we move to a vote center model. So certainly we can look to 2022 for different options, including sending out the applications again. We're just not quite there yet to start making those decisions.
Did the board know this question of manual confirmation would be required?
So we had, as I said, we had experienced it and seen it infrequently in loading the early voting results. Transferring the early voting results, but we hadn't done this model before to know the extent it would have on the time of the transfer process.
Roughly what % of the thumb drives were able to be transferred last night?
Okay, so for 19 counties, it was 100%. So for the vast majority of the counties, all of their election day results were transferred and are available on our website. For the 5 that we've been talking about, I don't have them as a percentage, but I have the number of thumb drives, so I can give those to you. So for Anne Arundel, they transferred 15 out of the 160 thumb drives. Baltimore City did 12 out of the 80. Montgomery transferred 42 out of 292. And Prince George's transferred 6 out of 440. And then Baltimore County, as I said, I'll get back to you on the issue there, but we didn't receive results from any of theirs.
Dave, I think that answered your question about thumb drives, but if not, just put a follow-up in the chat and we'll get to it. Is there an updated tally on how many mail-in ballots have been returned?
So we should be posting an updated sheet this morning. So I would just check back on our website in our press room this morning.
Okay, and then have you determined how many mail ballots are still waiting to be scanned, counted?
No, not yet.
Jane Miller, do you have a?
Yeah, just one more thumb drive question so we understand this. So when you say that Baltimore City or whatever, 12 of 80, does that mean because it was taking so long they stopped last night?
That's right. So we started hearing from the local boards pretty late in the night of the amount of time it was taking to transfer. And so we quickly jumped on the phone with our vendor to start the conversation about, are there other solutions? And then the decision was made just to stop and regroup tomorrow. And hopefully we would have some solutions to move that process more quickly. So that's why they're, at 8 to 10 minutes a thumb drive, those thumb drives are returning to the local board office by the election judges, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock for those that are closer. So it was just a very long process, and it was clear they were not going to finish up last night.
If this was Michigan, would that happen? Just kidding. We don't have the contested races that some of these other states have.
Could you please repeat the number of thumb drives for Montgomery County and Prince George's? And then related to that, there's also a question here that says, can you please break down how many thumb drives were used per county? I think you've done that. You're on.
I'll do that again for the 5. So Anne Arundel, they had 160 thumb drives used on election day, and they had transferred 15. Baltimore City, they used 80 thumb drives and transferred 12. Baltimore County had 128 thumb drives. Montgomery had 292 thumb drives and had transferred 42. And Prince George's had 440 and had transferred 6 to us.
Okay, and then there's one final question here that I see, and it's, why were they taking so long to transfer?
So as the data was being transferred, the database was looking for ballots from every precinct in the county. So if you were on earlier and I talked about my example of a voter in precinct 1 in Anne Arundel County, most likely is going to vote around where he or she lives. But the early voting, the election day vote center, say in Southern Anne Arundel, is going to be looking to see, do I have any ballots from precinct 1? And if it doesn't see any ballots from a precinct, it issues a prompt asking the user just to confirm that there are no ballots from precinct 1. It's that prompt and the user needing to manually click it that extended the transfer time and made it more closer to 8 to 10 minutes per stick.
Can you repeat how many were transferred in Baltimore County of the 128?
So we didn't receive any of them. And that was the other the question that I will follow up with as to why we didn't get those. Okay.
With that, I don't see any more hands raised or questions in the chat box. Are there any final questions before we?
So I think the question was about turnout.
Yep. And one other question just came in, Nikki, which will make this with the final one on this topic. Can you compare how long the data transfer during early voting took per thumb drive to how long it took last night? If it's 8 to 10 minutes last night, is that 2 times longer than normal?
So I think to compare it to, the appropriate comparison is how long it takes us to transfer thumb drives from early voting scanners. And so our experience with that is 2 to 3 minutes per thumb drive. So that's a comparable vote center to vote center comparison. And the counties were reporting it was 8 to 10 minutes, as opposed to 2 to 3 minutes that they had been seeing for early voting centers.
Okay, and then follow up on Prince George's County. How many total thumb drives were there in Prince George's County? And can we post this on the website somewhere in terms of the?
So the number of thumb drives is 440 in Prince George's, and we can look at posting that. It may even be there now, I'm not sure.
So the final question is just about the voter turnout.
Right. So unofficially, it's 474,799. So the unofficial turnout for yesterday statewide was 474,799 voters. Again, it's unofficial.
Okay. So with that, I don't see any additional questions. So we'll wrap it up. We will send a link to this video shortly after it's concluded, and then we will send out using social media, let you know when results are posted this afternoon that are still coming in from those partial tallies from the counties. Nikki, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate you asking good questions and allowing us to explain. I do think I would like to just wrap up with just reminding everybody that while we have partial results for those 5 counties, we have full results for the other 19 for Election Day, and we have full results from early voting for all 24 counties, and full results for all 24 counties of the mail-in ballots that they have counted. So early voting results are there for every county. Mail-in voting results are there for every county for the ballots that they've counted to date. Obviously, there are more to count, and that will continue tomorrow. And then Election Day, 19 counties are complete, and the 5 are partial. And that's what we'll be working on to get more results out in the next couple of days.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Talk soon.